my pleasure to welcome these three wonderful women, and I'll let them introduce themselves. But this was a great idea as we start a series in the LA community to talk about topics that are top of mind for Los Angeles. And transport, traffic, cars, and how we get around is a really key topic of conversation for most people in LA. So I'm glad you're all here. We're going to try to have time for Q&A at the end as well. But I'd love for each of our guests to introduce themselves, what agency they're a part of, and their role. And here at Google, we like to do fun icebreakers. So I tried to think of a fun one related to transportation. So tell me about your first car.
Funny. Well, I'll start.
Okay, great.
My first car was a 1967 Buick Skylark. So if you remember Eddie Murphy in 48 Hours, that Axel Foley car, yeah, that was my first car. And that's how I cut my teeth on learning how to change a tire and cars breaking down. It was some good training, but it got me where I needed to go. And my friends needed a ride, so they didn't talk about me.
And could you share your organization and your name too for folks that are not familiar?
Okay, great. My name is Monique Earl. I'm the Assistant General Manager over Administration and Field Operations at the Los Angeles Department of Transportation.
Great. Do you want to go this way? Yeah.
Yes, my name is Delilah Lanoix, and I'm CEO and co-founder of Butterfly, FLI, Freedom Leading to Independence, Technologies Incorporated.
And your first car?
Oh, my first car. Okay, so my first car, I wrecked it, learning how to parallel park. And so I could never be an engineer or anything like that. But my grandfather was teaching me, and he had two poles. And there was unfortunately a telephone pole, and I just kind of swung in and hit the telephone pole. So it wasn't a good experience. It was actually his old car, and it was green. It was a Chevy. Yeah.
Awesome.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Wiggins. I'm the CEO of Metrolink, and my first car was a red Mazda car. And it's funny you say about parallel parking, because I failed my driving test twice because they had a parallel parking component, and I had to move to a state where they didn't require you to parallel park to get your license.
My first car was a Honda Civic, forest green, and I also got in an accident pretty early. I backed into my friend's dad's car and I hit his boating hitch. So I had this circular dent in my car forever. So my dad wasn't too pleased with that. Great. Well, to kick it off, we thought of some questions related to transportation as well as technology. As you've heard, the women on the stage, some folks are in the startup space, more on-demand transportation. Other folks are working for the city or working for some of our major forms of transportation like Metrolink. So I'd love to hear your point of view. Obviously, traffic is a hot topic. I was just saying when we came in here, I could tell that school started because the traffic is starting to build up a little bit in LA. So what are some of the initiatives your teams are working on to combat traffic or be an alternative form of transportation? And who would like to go first? I know this is a hot topic.
Softball. Yeah, you're right.
Come on, Stephanie.
Sure, I'll start. Metrolink, we have an exciting role to play in trying to combat our soul-crushing traffic. You all know what I mean about the soul-crushing traffic. So we're in the space of helping folks make a smart choice if they have to drive longer distances. So our commuter rail network is actually in 6 different counties. And Michael was sharing that Google has an office in Irvine. So we have a station in Irvine. And we have people who make a smart choice every day. About 40,000 riders every day take our system. And what we are doing as a new initiative is to partner with firms like Butterfly and other on-demand partners to really help our riders complete their trip. You hear about this first mile, last mile, and it really can be a barrier to getting people out of their cars. And so we know at Metrolink, because 9 out of 10 of our riders actually have access to a car, they own a car, that they're making the smart choice every day to get on the train. And we want to help more people do that by connecting them with folks like Butterfly and others that help them complete their trip.
Excellent. Great.
Yeah, so it's been quite enjoyable and very innovative because she didn't tell you about the party train at 10:30, right? It takes off. And so that was really exciting, especially for the type of service that we were running. It's called Flex LA. It's a microtransit service in downtown LA, geofenced. And we had the pleasure of connecting people with Metrolink, and especially that train, because people could stay in downtown and really enjoy the city and not have to go home early or worry about transportation.
So, Katie, this is a complex question.
Yes.
Obviously, I work for the Department of Transportation, and so people point fingers at us all the time about the soul-crushing traffic and what we're doing about it. And it really is complex because obviously there's a history of it, particularly in this city. I remember my parents owned businesses in the San Fernando Valley when I was growing up, and the 405 has been the 405 since that time and before. What we did as a city and as a state and as a region started with widening not only our streets, but also our highways. And what that did was induce demand, basically. And so we began to recognize that just widening will not do. That's just going to provide more opportunity for people to drive. Also, as a city in the Department of Transportation, we run the automated transportation and surveillance and control system, the ATSAC system. And if any of you saw the movie The Italian Job, you probably remember that system where we have engineers who can actually control signal timing. And so we use all the data from our sensors in the road and cameras that we have to try to determine traffic patterns. And so we use that information to help with the flow of traffic. And again, that's not enough. Our system is probably about as efficient as it's going to get with those particular tools, which is why we're moving to the alternative modes of transportation. And we look to our partners with Metro and Metrolink and with the on-demand services such as what Delilah offers and Uber and Lyft, as well as all the dockless mobility that's out there today. You can find dockless anything at this particular point. I think I saw some dockless skates, but that's a whole nother story. And we look at providing those alternatives along with our bike system as well to help with the traffic in our city.
Excellent. Well, you brought up the on-demand apps, and I know, Delilah, this is a big part of your business as well. I'd love to hear, it's obviously becoming a more preferred mode of transportation, especially here in Los Angeles. I know I have several coworkers and others who might not own a car and just use the apps to get around. So I'd love to hear what's your perspective on the different agencies and the companies that are in that space right now. Where do maybe you play, and where do you talked a little bit about partnership there, and maybe where could that go in the future? Where would you love to see it go?
Yeah, so Butterfly provides services to persons with disabilities or anyone with a barrier to transportation. And very importantly, we have a partnership with Los Angeles Department of Transportation with our microtransit service that we run to provide services to seniors and low income. And so in that regard, we're really changing lives because in the past, they didn't have that type of on-demand service. They would have to schedule rides like 2 days in advance. Just imagine that you couldn't call an Uber or a Lyft today. What would you do? It would be very, very hard to get around. You'd have to go back to using, phoning for a taxi or whatever other mode. And so, we really like to say that we're changing lives in that regard. This woman that she used our service for the very first time, and she said, "Look, my daughter, she's at work. I wanted to go to the museum today, and I thought I was going to have to be stuck at home." And she says, "But I'm so happy, to have this type of on-demand service for seniors,
That's great.
instead of scheduling." Yeah.
I just wanted to add, I think technology is really the disruptor for transportation. And that's what I see as kind of like the major initiative that's going to help get people out of their cars and really tame traffic. And so our focus as we look at on-demand apps is to make sure we don't have a closed-off system ourselves, so that we have an open system, open architecture that people who use our app then can quickly access other on-demand apps, really to reduce the friction that's in the system and make it really easy and seamless for them to plan their trip from beginning to end.
Yeah, I think the integration part is key for someone's journey. Like you said, that last mile, how do you get there?
Right. And just to dovetail on what Stephanie was saying, at LADOT, we want to make sure that we are bringing all of that information together to help with the commute overall. And so we took the lead in the transportation industry on mobility data specifications, MDS, if anyone's heard about it. And we basically said, hey, mobility companies, dockless companies, anybody with an app, we need access to that data so that we can take that data and then plug it into our system and help to provide better choices and options. We have mobility hubs and also within our ATSAC system, so that it is a pleasurable experience for all of our users and that all of our users have access to it. And we also use that information to help in terms of equity and making sure that some of our communities that are disadvantaged or not provided opportunities are treated as equally as other communities.
Great. So I want to transition also to the future of LA. Obviously, you have some big events coming up, like the Olympics. Even just, you think of yourself going to a large event at the Staples Center or the Forum, transportation always seems to be a crunch, right, at that time. And I know the Olympics are top of mind for a lot of people, especially as we try to connect the city and connect the sites that are going to host it. I'd love to hear your perspective on these large events coming to Los Angeles and how maybe your agencies and businesses are thinking of supporting that or doing innovative things around it.
Fortunately, as a city, we've hosted the games before, and so we're not new to this. We've had some experience, and that was one of the reasons why the IOC really looked at LA as a prime partner for these upcoming Olympic Games. And so what we're doing is taking that particular information from the previous games, and then all of the information that we have gathered over the years in terms of hosting Super Bowls and NBA games and just the regular games that go on within our city. And then we're starting to plan. We're beginning the planning process for 2028. There have obviously been meetings held, but we'll take all of that information along with information from the transportation experts who have been involved with other games around the world to help us to come up with a strategy.
Yeah, and as a private company, we hope to partner with the municipalities and the or other organizations and provide uniformity in service to persons with disabilities or any special needs so that they can also access the games. Mm-hmm.
We're really excited at Metrolink about the prospects of being able to be a showcase for the Olympics in 2028. Metrolink is Southern California's premier commuter rail network system, and we operate in 6 counties. So we really have an opportunity to not only bring in Southern California to the games. Most of them are in LA County, but some of them will be in Orange County or in Riverside County, and we have the opportunity to provide a backbone. So we see the Olympics as kind of like magic fairy dust, right? Whenever you think about the Olympics, people, they not only smile, they're really thinking about how can I break through red tape? What can we do? And so we've been doing that at Metrolink, and we've come up with a program called SCORE, Southern California's Optimized Rail Expansion Program. It's a $10 billion program to really improve our network, so we provide service every 15 to 30 minutes in time for the Olympics, right? So that's kind of our exciting initiative as we look to being a major player as far as the Olympics are concerned.
Excellent. Well, we're all excited for that. So you touched on this a little bit. Many of you were talking about how you're using data signals, right, to inform some of your decisions. I'd love to hear, it's a big buzzword, smart cities and machine learning. Google has an initiative called Sidewalk where we're trying to innovate with different cities in the area around this. I'd love to hear how you and your teams might be working on projects where you're using data or machine learning. Have you thought about that? Are you putting together maybe task force to look into that, or is it something you're already doing? And what kind of data sets you're thinking about? We at Google love to hear about data. So
Sure. So at LADOT, we're really excited about the future of transportation, and particularly as it relates to autonomous vehicles. And so about 2 years ago, we put together a transportation technology bench where we reached out to consultants in the form of an RFQ, a request for qualification process, where we could have a bench of contractors on board to help us to come up with some innovative ideas around around technology in this space. And so we have about 80 different consultants on that particular bench. And we are looking at launching several different pilots just around autonomous vehicle and autonomous vehicle testing in Los Angeles. It won't be on the roads. Calm down. Everybody don't get excited. Not just yet, but we do have some partnerships in play that will help us to just come up with all of the various scenarios as it will relate to AV.
Yeah, so technology has really sparked a movement in terms of bringing different ideas, ideation, different types of companies together, just bringing the community together to, provide more uniformity in service and access to service in our communities. Mm-hmm.
For us at Metrolink, we are looking at big data through our positive train control software system. So not unique to Metrolink, but the railroad industry as a whole nationwide. There's this federal mandate a few years ago to implement kind of like this life-saving software called positive train control. And we were among the first in the country to have it fully installed in our system. But what we're finding is beyond it being a great safety measure, it actually prevents the trains from having any devastating collisions. It's also generated a lot of new data for us. And for the industry, we're looking at this data, mining the data to identify capacity improvements, identify better ways and more efficient ways to operate the system. So those are some of the ways that we're looking at kind of that technology and also looking at autonomous trains.
awesome. Great. Well, a lot of people in the room here work maybe on the customer-facing side. They might be in sales or the operations side or on the YouTube side working with partners. I'd love to hear how each of your different divisions or organizations view your customer and your constituents. Obviously, a lot of us are consumers of either your products or the tools you're providing, the city. How are you always thinking of the customer first in the way you're designing things? And is there anything you've recently done or changed based on customer feedback?
Yeah, well, at Butterfly, our technology is designed around the customer and to address the specific needs. We focus on healthcare, municipal, and also government. And so in healthcare, for instance, our clients' needs are very exact in terms of taking care of their patients, providing the very best patient experience. So we focus on, technology with exceptional customer service. And that's how our technology is designed in terms of being ease of use and in terms of matching the patient with the specific type of transportation for their needs.
At Metrolink, I've come on board and really stated that we need to put the customer at the heart of everything that we do. So I've rolled out a customer first vision. And technology is really the way to provide an outstanding customer experience. So some of the initiatives that had actually started before I joined the organization that have rolled out over the last few months, we now allow people to text us if they have questions, if they want to report any safety issues that they may have or security issues, they can use that text feature. We are working on rolling out a loyalty program that will be technology-based and tied to our mobility ticketing app. And we are looking at other initiatives. We just partnered with Uber to enhance our service disruption, our quality service pledge. One of the main things we know our riders need to have an outstanding customer experience is really high quality, good information. And so we're partnered with them when there's a service disruption that we will give them a code and they just put in that code and they can order Uber at no cost to them. So those are some of the initiatives that we are pursuing, and really they're all technology driven and information driven.
At LADOT, we are focused on our customer by making safety a priority in this city. We have a program that some of you may have heard of called Vision Zero, where our goal is to get to zero traffic deaths by 2025. And we take that goal very seriously because over 240 people die each year on our city streets from a vehicular-related collision or vehicular violence. And so we look at that and we look at the data in terms of where that's happening, and we make key investments in our network based on that. We also look at saving lives figuratively, because if you can improve transportation access for people in terms of getting to good jobs and getting to quality schools and to healthcare, then you are saving their lives from a whole nother standpoint. I always say that LADOT is a social justice organization disguised as a transportation agency. And so we really take that to heart in terms of the work that we're doing to really, really put all of our constituents first.
That's wonderful. Great. Well, switching gears, pun intended, for the transportation panel, but a lot of questions arose. I know when folks were seeing the flyer and seeing, three amazing, powerful women in these positions, to talk a little bit about your career in sometimes a more traditional industry like transport or government. So I'd love to ask a few questions related to your career journey, if that's all right with you. Oh, great. So I'd love to hear how you came into the industry of transportation and how your career kind of came to be in transportation, if it was always in that, or if you had kind of a moment where you transitioned into that. And how did you find that at the time when you started, the culture of those organizations and maybe how they've evolved today?
Well, I got into transportation by accident. It was not intentional. I had come home for the summer and was going to go to grad school to get my MBA, and I decided I would just sign up with a temp agency for the summer. My undergraduate degree was in business, so I got assigned to work for a transportation agency in their finance department, and it opened my eyes to this world that I was not familiar with. This world is one where the agency has control over millions of dollars, and they make decisions about access and opportunity, where the buses operate, where the trains will operate, where the highways get built, and which streets and roads get paved. So there weren't people who looked like me in the organization. There weren't a lot of women in decision-making roles in the organization. So I decided to put off going to grad school and find out more about the experience.
Great.
So, quite by accident, also, we had an opportunity to acquire a transportation company, existing transportation company. And so once we did, it was very challenging because of the type of rider we were transporting, and it was persons with special needs. So it just opened my eyes to to the communities as a whole, and how everyone does need access, and how it really inspires their lives, and is very life changing. Yeah.
By accident as well. I don't think anybody growing up saying, do you want to work for a transportation agency? You don't raise your hand in third grade for that. And so my background is actually in municipal finance. And I worked for the city. I've been working for the city of LA for over 15 years in that particular space and understanding budgets, which was also something I wasn't quite interested in, but so glad that I got that opportunity. If you understand the city's budget, you can work within any organization. We have over 26 different departments, from aging to the zoo. And so I worked understanding the city's budget. I worked as a deputy mayor under Mayor Villaraigosa, and then I went on to work for the city controller under Ron Galprin as the deputy controller, and then Salita Reynolds, our general manager, and I met, and she talked so passionately about this transportation stuff, and I just couldn't, I'm like, it's a bunch of engineers over there, and I don't know what you guys are doing, and I'm worried about traffic, that's it. And she let me know about all the exciting things that she was doing really around this social justice space. And she said, hey, I have an opening for administration, which includes our budget and accounting, but also field operation, which includes our crews that stripe streets, paint curbs, post signs, build and repair light signals. You should apply for that job. And so I did. I applied for the job, and we'll never look back. It's been amazing.
Well, we're getting into our performance review season here. People are being reflective about their career in the last 6 months and what they've accomplished. I'd love to hear, when you look back on your career and think about it, were there any mentors or sponsors that stood out to you in terms of guiding you through this industry, or maybe someone in a different industry that you look to for advice or collaborate with?
Well, I love that you said sponsors as well, because I feel like people take mentorship too seriously, quite frankly. It's great to have mentors, but you could be mentored by a podcast, if you ask me, and you can be mentored at lunch. It doesn't have to be this formal relationship. And so I like to look at it as mentors and advocates. And I prefer the advocate form of it, in terms of somebody who is willing to use their influence and their positions of power to help me to navigate my career in whatever way. And I have found a number of different advocates who have assisted me in my career, and they come from all different backgrounds, and some of them are old white men, and some of them are my peers, my sisters that are here, and some of them are younger folks. I love the millennials in my office. They tell me everything. They teach me everything. We hang out. We go to lunch. I get invited to the happy hours. It's all good. So I try to just surround myself with different groups of people.
That's great.
Yeah, diversity. That's the ticket. I think for me personally, I was inspired by somebody in the audience. Supervisor Yvonne Brathwaite Burke, and she is a dynamo, just as a woman with a lot of firsts, and someone that just steps out and says, "Hey, I'm gonna do this. Get out of my way." But she says it very nicely, so but she gets the job done. So also, and I agree with you, Monique. My team is very diverse. We have millennials, we have, what do you call them, Generation X, and we have other people in the group. And so my team, we really get going. We really have a lot of fun, and we know what we're doing is extremely important, but we don't take ourselves so seriously. We just keep our eye on providing solutions for what we're here to do, and really, just get out there and have a ball while we're doing it.
I agree with the ladies. I will say I never participated as a part of a formal mentorship program, but I have had sponsors and advocates, and I think they are critical in terms of your career development, because you want You want to know people who are in the room when those decisions are being discussed and made. And then when you get to a certain level, then you, I think, have an obligation to be one of those sponsors and give back. And that's what I try to do now.
Absolutely. Great. Well, I'd love to open it up for questions for the group. I think we have a few minutes left here, and Michael has a great cube there for Q&A. And thanks to Michael Carney for helping to organize this.
Good afternoon. My name is Des Schwa. Was really thrilled to hear about a lot of the initiatives you all had today, but one thing that I didn't hear about that I'd like to just probe into more, the environment. Do you guys see yourselves as kind of big, I guess, stewards of the environment? Do you guys see that you guys play a part in trying to help steer the ship in the opposite direction? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So at Metrolink, we believe we contribute both to the environment and social impact. We participated the first time in our history in providing free fares on Earth Day this past April. We saw a 48% increase in our ridership as a result of doing that. Why are we doing that? First of all, if you're out of your car, you're reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We also, though, need to be a good steward ourselves. So the system we provide is good for the environment, but also we are in the process of converting our diesel locomotives to the cleanest diesel available, which is Tier 4, which reduces greenhouse gas emissions from 64 to 85%, depending on the diesel engine that's being exchanged out. I'm committed to a zero-emission future, and I know our board is. And I was just talking to our new chief of marketing communications, and as we look at providing free fares next Earth Day, we want to do even more as an employer ourselves, thinking how can we be more sustainable, as well as providing a sustainable mobility system.
Yeah, so I think our partnership with Los Angeles Department of Transportation, the Flex Los Angeles project is a good example of getting more people into one vehicle instead of having, people just, driving around downtown and parking at different places and just not being able to access downtown area in general. And so the vehicles are, for six passengers, and they promote rideshare. So that's one way that we're participating in ensuring a clean environment.
The city of Los Angeles has been at the forefront of reducing greenhouse gases and looking at transportation as a key part of those plans. There's the sustainability LA plan and also the mobility plan. And so right now we've made key investments. We have 4 fully electric buses in our municipal bus fleet, which is the Dash bus system. Anybody ride Dash or Commuter Express here? Come on, get on the Dash, get on Commuter Express. You're missing out. We plan to increase that number by 155 fully electric buses by 2021. We are also looking at the electrification of our municipal fleet as well. And so each agency has been provided dollars within our budget to ensure that happens, not only from the fleet perspective, but the infrastructure perspective as well. So we are putting in the chargers throughout all of our locations, but also out in the field as well.
Hi, this is Mayra. I'm on Katie's team. My question for the 3 of you actually is, how do you expect self-driving cars are actually going to change your individual businesses and the ways that you're serving consumers and constituents?
I think the self-driving cars can help with that first mile, last mile strategy. Again, our biggest pain point is getting people to the station. Most people drive to get to our trains. And then how are they going to complete their trip, right? So I think that's how self-driving cars will impact our business. Actually, it will be complementary to, I think, helping us get more riders on our system.
Yeah, so in our business, I think it will impact the safety of the rider, and it will just increase the. I think it will increase ridership in terms of disabled population having more access to different services as well. And it will allow us, because they'll always need some type of assisted transportation, especially if you have vision impairment or hearing impairment, or if you're in a wheelchair, you'll need that extra assistance. But in terms of the safety, the general safety of fleets and persons that provide the transportation, I think it's going to have a tremendous impact.
Same thing with LADOT, we're looking at those pilots so that we can get access to the variety of data needed to increase the amount of self-driving vehicles that we'll see on our streets. We are looking at partnering with different companies on some autonomous vehicle pilots within certain areas where we can provide microtransit, such as the Arts District and out on the West Side. And so we're looking at that in terms of just opportunities to increase alternatives to the use of the vehicle.
I was just curious, we didn't talk about any of the challenges that you face, for example, with rideshare and the transition, or the revolution with transportation and all the on-demand challenges. So could you share some of your challenges with us with all of that going on?
Well, just from a policy standpoint, when you have companies that come into your system and you don't have access to a lot of information, clearly that creates problems. And so what we try to do is sort of take a step back and say, hey, various companies, how can we partner in terms of this? And we don't want to ever get caught flat-footed again, which is why we came up with the mobility data specifications so that we can have just access to information and data and help with the planning process so that when companies come in, it does not create disruption that is not favorable to the system. Obviously, LADOT has 42 different business lines, and one of those business lines is the taxi service. So the taxi industry had to deal with that as well. And then we had to also help them to understand how to improve technology, access to technology, in which we worked with Delilah at Butterfly and her team in terms of getting a better app and better technology to help improve the quality of their service.
Yeah, and in fact, Butterfly's model, we have certified companies, existing companies. We don't use individual drivers, and that's because of the vulnerable population that we serve. And so, it's very important to improve upon the technology, and again have uniformity in use. We will be launching the direct-to-consumer app in 2020. Right now, we are a B2B type business, providing services to on-demand and schedule assisted services to organizations and industries that serve persons with disabilities. So I think, just embracing technology and innovation and working with cities and other organizations is very, very important.
I think our biggest challenge is the integration of the data, particularly because, again, on average, 9 out of 10 of our riders have access to a car. Also, over 90% say they use, Lyft or Uber or Butterfly. So it's about getting them access to that information and aggregating it in a way that's seamless and easy for them, right? So that they have that information all in one place. And so that's our biggest challenge, is how do we create a system and provide that information to our customers who, by the way, all want it customized, right? And they want it predictive, right? A great idea one of my employees shared with me is, well, they take the train, they take Metrolink, but they also then connect to the subway. Well, they want Metrolink to also tell them, well, when is the subway have a disruption. And right now we're very siloed, so they'll want to know that information. And so that's been the challenge with us, is thinking more holistically and how we can leverage technology to help close that information gap.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think, I don't think we talked about mobility as a service. And that's more of a concierge service for the rider, for the commuter. And I agree with Stephanie. It's very difficult to provide an excellent service to the community when everything is siloed. So MAS brings everything together.
Great. I think we had one more in the back.
Hi, how's it going? My name's Atlas. Thank you all for being here today. My question was going to touch on the subway system, and then also because there's really not. I mean, I use a car. I haven't been in LA for just like 6 months, but as compared to like New York or something like that, is there plans for that? And then two, just because I like Elon Musk and all the stuff that he does, like the Boring Company, right? And what he did. Is there any talks of anything collaboration on that, or just kind of going underground? And then obviously, of course, about the environment, sustainability, and not destroying everything underneath us. Thank you.
I'll take that one, because before I came over to Metrolink 7 months ago, I used to work for LA Metro as the deputy CEO. I did that for the last 4 years, and I've been at Metro for 10 years. So in terms of the subway system, yes, we want to be like New York. So we were fortunate that the residents of LA County voted to tax themselves again, and they passed Measure M in 2016, which is a multi-billion-dollar program to really expand the light rail and the subway network. And Mayor Garcetti has also, when he was chair of the Metro Board, he led this initiative called 28 by 28, which is 28 projects to get completed in time for the 2028 Olympics. So some of the projects that are in the pipeline are to extend the subway to the west side, look at the Sepulveda Pass and come up with some type of alternative. Yes, whether it's monorail, subway, light rail, it's being studied right now. So that's underway. And then while I was at Metro, our CEO did meet with Elon Musk. And they have been working with them as they looked at testing their tunnel system in Hawthorne. And also at one point they had on the books, they were looking at Sepulveda Pass, and I think they recently decided to shelve that and start looking at somewhere near Dodger Stadium. But Metro is working with them, as well as I believe the city of LA, to be a resource, right?
Yes, they are. I don't have the details on those conversations, but I know there's been some conversations and tours and things of that nature.
Great.
I actually took public transit to get around LA for 4 years, and I recently stopped. But just two questions based off my experience. One, so I lived in Palms and I was commuting to Playa. So I had a combination of Metro buses or Culver City buses, and then I'd come to like Centinela and either a Metro or a Big Blue bus. And Los Angeles is interesting, where you have LA, but you have these individual cities within them as well. Culver City and Santa Monica, both being two of them. So transferring on the bus, it was like there was no transfer benefit. So my cost to get here was, I think, $7 a day. And that just wasn't sustainable. So I ended up stopping. So what challenges other than that one do you guys run into with LA's unique setup of having these independent cities? And then my second, my second question. So we have the Bologna Creek bike path here, which is amazing. It would be a great way for a lot of people to commute to Playa, since Playa is sort of a public transit dead zone. Unfortunately, to get from the bike path here, you either have to risk your life on the Lincoln Bridge, which I did for many years, or you have to come down Centinela, where you have to bike between an Angelino and getting on the freeway, not once but twice. So what do you guys see as like the future of potentially leveraging bikes or creating like scooter infrastructure so that people who can have that opportunity as well?
Great questions.
I'll take the first one, you take the bikes. Okay. So we are challenged with having, I think there are over 28 major transit operators in LA County and even more. And so what we've been doing as a region, I will say as a region, we tried to develop a universal smart card, or the TAP system. And that has been challenging because of the institutional silos, and people were thinking about their agency and their revenue and not thinking about the customer first, right? Because of the impacts that you just shared. So over the last, I would say, 6 years or so, the region came together and they all agreed to the one tap card. It's not complete universality because they all have different fare structures, but at least there's now one tap card for all the municipal operators. Shortly before I left Metro, though, the operators had also come together and decided to offer free transfers for your second transfer as well. So that would have addressed your pain point on the additional costs and not getting a benefit of a transfer. But increasingly what we're finding, and the municipal operators, the general managers meet monthly as a group to talk about issues of commonality. And what they're finding is technology is really the answer to help address what the ridership declines and improve the customer experience. So I think the future is bright as long as we have Googles of the world and others out there who are willing to bring to the municipal operators and the transit agencies information and ideas on how technology can help address their needs and concerns.
I want to say I love the tap card that I could use it on the metro because Palms has 2 stations, metro stations near them. And so using the tap from the metro to the Big Blue bus, to the LA bus, to the Culver City bus, and the subway was amazing. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Right, and as it relates to bikes, we're never going to get out of this soul-crushing traffic if we do not look at alternatives. And so for the last decade, the city of Los Angeles, along with our regional partners, have made key investments in bike infrastructure, but it only goes so far. And so LA is an eclectic mix of communities. I mean, you look at New York and it's real distinct, right, in terms of the boroughs, but LA has some strong cultures within various communities, and there's some communities who are not ready to add bike infrastructure, and you're going to get a whole lot of pushback. But not only the communities, but the people who go through those communities to get home from work, particularly in areas where the congestion is so thick, it's difficult to extend the network without a lot of education, without a lot of engagement from those communities to understand that there are sacrifices and trade-offs. We're going to complain about the traffic. We also have to be willing to make some of those sacrifices. And so I feel your pain as it relates to the breaks in the infrastructure. I went riding from my house in Leimert Park down to Culver City the other day, and it's just a little bit frustrating because you're in a protected bike lane for a portion of that trip, and that feels amazing. And then you kind of go out in the wilderness. So yes, we understand, and we're working on it as a city.
Just wanted to wrap up and thank all the women on the panel today for joining. I've learned a lot about the transport network in LA, and it was great having, such a diverse panel of different heads of industry here when we talk about transport. And hopefully we can continue to partner with you on the Google side with both data and partnerships. So we're excited to host you today. Thank you, everyone.